One time, a CEO told me that he was worried his CTO heard his title wrong because he thought it was CT no. No matter what the CEO asked for, the answer was always no. Are you the same kind of CTO? Let's talk about how you can transition from what might feel safe and correct when you look at it just technically, but extremely wrong when it comes to the business, into a CTO or a VP of engineering who's a genuine executive who cares about the business, is appreciated by the CEO, and can create amazing impact on the company just by switching this mindset. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech exec consultant, and I help CTOs just like you make the switch from amazing tech executives to amazing tech executives. Let's talk about what's a CT no. If you come from a technical background, it's very easy to think about things from the lens of, is it feasible or not? Can you do that or not? Is that the right thing to do or not? So when the CEO asks, can we do this? You might very easily say no, because when you look at the requirements as they are being laid out in that instant, and you look at the timing, you're like, no. And that no might be because you feel like quality will not be good enough, you feel like there are too many question marks around it, you don't have enough certainty, you have other things on your plate, whatever, you've got your reasons. I'm sure you're not doing this just out of spite, but it's easy to just say, no, shrug it off and continue. And I've seen so many co-founders who were frustrated from their tech executives just giving them these answers that are short, too succinct, and don't provide them with enough context to even realize what's happening. Often I'm reached out to because the CEO is like, does this make sense? Is it just really a no? Or, is there something else? How can I tell if my CTO just doesn't want to do that, or if that's really the case? I've actually seen cases where either consciously or not, CTOs, co-founders had this habit of using their leverage as the CTOs, as those, on the switch of the tech organization, being able to say, no, sorry, we can't do that. That's going to take too long. And that allows you to just shoot down anything you don't really believe in, anything you don't really want to do. It's a way to avoid disagree and commit, because you can disagree and say, I would have committed, but I can't commit because that's just not feasible. So that's a moot discussion. We don't want to do that. We want to be genuine with our partners and our peers. We want to create organizations that actually don't just say not possible, only doing things that are straightforward and that anyone can do, but instead find those opportunities where we can do something that at face value immediately sounds like it's not possible or might not work out, and let's find that specific opportunity. If you want to transition your thinking and be more of an enabler in the organization instead of being the CT no, you can start by, first of all, recognizing this mindset. It's so easy for us to be there. It feels safe because you're essentially only saying and only committing to things you have a relatively higher rate of certainty about. But that's not the right thing to do for your company. You have to learn how to take these risks, or even without risks, how to find the ways of making things possible, even at first, if at first they don't sound possible. And after you realize that there is this paradigm that you have to break out of, the next step for you is to stop thinking in binary. Things are not just 0 and 1s, yes or no, black and white. You can think about things not as, is it feasible, and just have to spit out a Boolean answer. You're not a function. You can shift from having this, okay, here's what we want to do, here's what we've been thinking about, and you, instead of saying yes or no, unless you have a very concrete reason to be that succinct and that certain, your output should probably be more about the spectrum of possibilities. Because anything can be rearranged, reshuffled, descoped, unscoped, postponed, etc., to ensure that we can do something, we can achieve something. Maybe that something would not reach the bar where the business would see it as being valuable enough to do. That's fine. But at least give it a shot. At least you will be able to say, I tried to come up with a few options to see what we can actually do. So start with just not being that Boolean function. Instead, always provide options, provide spectrums, try and describe in a healthy manner how things should look like. What are our options? We can do this, we can do that, maybe that. Let me ask that person, let me consult the architect, whatever. So you can try and come up with a few options. I really prefer to see a bunch of options, even if some are less than ideal, as opposed to just being told yes or no. These options can be very helpful when you're communicating with people who aren't technical to understand what are the difficulties and why it's important to do certain things in this order. Because if you just say no, because a bunch of tech jargon, you're going to lose them. But if you explain, see, we can do this, but this extra, the diff between this and that, requires a lot of work. And they can see tangibly what can be achieved more easily and what would require more effort. Once you have the spectrum, once you start explaining the differences between the ways of implementing, you can see how things can really change, how people can understand what's important, what's heavy, what has more risks, and adjust accordingly. So instead of being binary, and once you start thinking in spectrums, I want you and everyone who has a lead position in your organization, the managers, the tech leads, the senior engineers, everyone should understand that we do not provide Boolean answers. We move into these spectrums. And if you're not sure how to create these spectrums, always try to think about things when it comes to the range of possibilities. How can we do this? And there's something very critical here. If you're trying to think about options and you're not sure how because it seems to you that the requirements are too rigid or the deadline is dead set, etc., and therefore because of that, because of these constraints, you don't think that there's anything you can do, hold it. Don't just rush to say, okay, I tried, but it's gonna be a no. Wait. What you want to do now is to drill deeper. Don't just take whatever you're being told at face value. Instead, try and understand as a peer would, because you are, what are the constraints, why they exist, why do we need things like that. How do you do that? First of all, you ask why a bunch of times. I've told so many teams that if they learn how to ask why enough, they will just by doing that become at the top 10% of the teams I'm seeing worldwide. Because when we ask why, we transition from being executors to being peers, to being able to hold these conversations and talk about what really matters. You gain the context of the decisions being made, which allows you to ensure that you're not doing things that no one really cares about, especially if we have that tight of a deadline. If you ask why enough, and I can understand, oh, actually, I don't think we care about that extra system, about those screens, about whatever just right now, right? I mean, the deadline doesn't have to have that part. We can ship this, and then once we hit the deadline, we can add those things, right? That's what you want to do. You want to ask why so you really understand everything. Story time. I was once working at a SaaS startup and we realized that we had a major deadline that could not be moved, really, because of some big tech conference, etc. And we knew that we wanted to do a bunch of things and also add the ability to have something that actually costs money, add billing. And this is in the very early days of Stripe. Adding billing wasn't as straightforward as it is right now. Do you know what we did? I was looking at it and I saw, okay, we have the features we need for the launch. We have the billing system we need for the launch. And the launch is within so and so weeks. We're not gonna fit everything. What are we gonna do? It would have been easy for me to say, no, sorry, not possible. But you know what I did? I asked why, understood the system, and then you know what we realized together? Oh, we actually want to start with a 30-day free trial in the beginning and only then start charging. Which meant, what I understood is like, oh, so we have the deadline for the launch, but from that point, we're going to have another month to finish the billing because we don't actually have to bill people in the first 30 days. Amazing. I can do what's needed when it comes to the features for the launch, and I can implement the billing system in the extra month we have then. Right? So we launched without having really a billing part. We just had what was needed to make people realize they were going to be billed, but we didn't have all the subscription management and the invoices, etc., because we had the extra month. This is the difference between being the easy, trigger-happy CTO, just no, shooting all the ideas down, as opposed to being a partner, being a peer who tries to work with the colleagues and find a way of making the business a success. The last thing I want you to think about is that many times the requirements, the specifications, the deadlines are not really set in stone, and you can tackle these from different angles to try and understand what's really needed. And this is, when I do this, I don't do this from an argumentative perspective. I'm not just trying to shut down everything that's on Jira saying, do you really need that? Do you really need that? Like a robot. I try to understand the context. I try to understand what's critical, what ways, what sorts of clients do we first expect to see? Because if you're thinking about any sort of SaaS, you probably have a wide range of scaling, of demographics, of geographies, everything that you need to support. And you can support all of them, and implementing that with the long tail of possibilities will take you years. However, understand what's our go-to-market. What are we going to do right now? When someone tells you about a deadline, I see so many times that the CEO just says something because they want to get it done, and they know that a deadline really helps set everything, and they need a deadline because they need to communicate something to the investors, to the prospects. And you hear the deadline and you realize, okay, that's set in stone, but I cannot do it. Instead, ask, give options. Say, if we had 2 more weeks, this would have been better. Or if I had another month, this would have been better. Talk about that. Maybe the CEO would say, okay, so if you can guarantee that a month later things will be fine, I'm okay with pushing it a month. If you'll tell me certainty will rise from 20% to 80% in that month, that might be worth it for me. No one wants to have what just happened at Sonos, where because they were giving the deadline of shipping that app and they didn't know how to communicate, how to say what's important, how to descope properly, how to say that the requirements didn't make sense or the deadline didn't make sense together. What we ended up seeing is a team that shipped something so horrible that millions of users were pissed. The stock cratered, the CEO lost his job. You don't want to do that, right? You want to ensure that deadlines don't become genuine, cannot be moved deadlines unless they really are so. We live in the software world. Things often are a lot softer than you think. Talking about the business aspects, about the impact of this, about what the clients need, about why we have this date, so we can see what's important and find something that actually makes sense for the entire company together. And this will allow you to transition from being someone who just says no or yes when that's easy, to being that person who always sees the spectrum. And you know, this spectrum isn't just 2D, being like, okay, we can do it fully, we can not do it at all, and we can find options in between. This is 3-dimensional because you have the time aspect. You have the ability to say, maybe we'll just implement parts of it right now and use some open source just to fake it till we make it in the first release, and maybe use that other company or that very pricey API call just to get it started, knowing we'll have to replace it later, whatever. Realize that you have a bunch of options in the world that you can use so that you would not be the CTO, you will be someone who's a force multiplier in the company, an enabler as opposed to a gatekeeper. having that transition will make you so valuable as a tech executive, will make your organization provide so much impact, and will put you on the path of having an amazing 2025. That's it. I hope you got something out of this. I hope to shift your paradigm out of being the naysayer. And if you like this, I think you really enjoy some of my latest videos that you can find here on the screen somewhere, depending on what YouTube decided to show you today. Thanks.